good, folks. Obviously dealing with housekeeping. Kentucky Patriot says they just got done watching my scope from yesterday. Good taste, sir. Good taste. Thank you for being here. Will Chamberlain. Human Events Publisher. It's an interesting day. I got smeared by an organization run by a person with a history of racist and transphobic comments. I was called a quote, unquote, extremist. What is their evidence? Because obviously it's the first question I would ask about the evidence that is out there. What is it? Let's see. Let's see what they've got on me. Okay. Again, the title of the thing is, here is the extremist figures who are going to the White House Social Media Summit. I didn't announce it publicly, but it's true that I am going, so I'll be there. Oh, Jesus, he's right about, Posobiec is right about my extreme hairstyle. But it says, Will Chamberlain, 1. Chamberlain pushed a likely hoax, smearing protesters as pedophiles. Likely hoax. That's a weird thing to say. Like, normally when something's a hoax, you can prove it's a hoax. 1. 2, I tweeted a video like 2 years ago. Got it. Okay. All right. What else is the evidence? Hold on. Let's see here. Second, Chamberlain's Human Events published a smear from a far-right troll linking journalists to anti-fascists. There are actual, like, it's literally doing like a Twitter analysis. Like, the data is on Twitter. It's a Twitter analysis. 1. 2, somebody says Lenahan's methodology was described by extremely suspect. Is there a link to this description? Who is the social media okay, weird. And it says Chamberlain defended Human Events for pushing the smear. It's not a smear, saying that it considered Quillette, where Lenahan published a piece pushing his smear, again, I keep repeating it, a reputable outlet, and would not independently fact-check work appearing on its site when commenting on broad terms. That's true. I did give that comment to an article for the Columbia Journalism Review, and I stand by that remark because I believe that Quillette, 1, was right, 2, is a reputable outlet, 3, I think it's a slur on them to suggest that we need to independently fact-check their work. I don't know what's going on with sound. I really, really don't. I may try using a different thing other than this iPad because I'm getting consistent comments about the sound. But so I will talk loudly. The point being, it's kind of weird, right? But so there's 2 things. There's 1, there's the how do I describe this? This dog that didn't bark. They don't have anything else on me, right? Like, think about how active I've been on Twitter and Periscope, how much public political commentary I have done over the course of the past 2 years, right? Like, think about it for a second. I've been doing Periscopes since roughly May 2017. 2 years of Periscopes. Over 500. I don't even know how many Periscopes I've done because they only go back to like somewhere in 2017. So I've done more than 500 Periscopes. Almost all of which are political commentary. If there is an objectionable view that I've held, it would have come out by now. But they can't identify a single objectionable view. I've written a number of articles for Human Events. None of them are discussed. I've tweeted. I have tens of thousands of tweets. Nothing. Nothing. No objectionable views. And as Jack points out, who am I grouped with? James O'Keefe, Charlie Kirk, Matt Gaetz, Marsha Blackburn? Really? Like, extremists? Okay. Second point. This is an organization run by a man named Angelo Carasone. Angelo Carasone had a blog where he made overtly racist and transphobic remarks. Now, granted, he was in college. It's 2003. But if we're actually looking, like, there's nothing. They literally do not quote a comment that I make, except the one that says that Quillette is a reputable outlet. That's literally the only comment that is quoted from me. So they don't have anything I've said. They have 2 incidents. One where I defend a Quillette piece. I think Claire Lehman is a wonderful journalist. That is a moderate outlet. And yet, nothing. Weird. So there's a few questions I have. 1, if Media Matters is going to characterize me as this, can I not characterize them as a left-wing hate group? A racist, transphobic left-wing hate group. Because they're led by a person who's made racist and transphobic remarks. And given that they're willing to call me a quote-unquote extremist based on no evidence, doesn't it sound like maybe, in fact, that it's a fair characterization of them to call them a left-wing hate group? To call them a racist and transphobic left-wing hate group? Again, they're apologizing for it, right? Like, they criticize other people for these things. They criticize Tucker Carlson for these things. Second, is it okay for me to call Media Matters a harassing institution, an institution of targeted harassment? This is not the first time that I've been confronted by an employee of Media Matters. Some of you don't know this, but a few months ago, Madeline Peltz, who is an employee of Media Matters and the person who wrote the big Tucker Carlson hit piece, confronted me in a bar very close to my home and said that Media Matters was quote-unquote watching me. I posted a Periscope and a detailed thread about this incident where, out of nowhere, I've never met her before, and she confronted me as I was leaving a bar and said that Media Matters was watching me. It was very strange in a threatening and menacing tone. I've never heard a response from Madeline Peltz. I even invited her out to La Colombe for some oat milk latte. She never obliged. I feel somewhat slighted, to be honest. But that's another point. Like, the behavior here is strange, and one gets the feeling that they're out as a vendetta. That it's because I have aggressively confronted and criticized Media Matters. That's not to mention the times that Go Angelo himself has literally flipped me the bird on Twitter. Appalling, right? Very, very unprofessional behavior. The man has a serious temper. But on the whole, basically, I am reassured, right? I am reassured. That's the way I feel personally, right? That's the way I look at this whole thing. I am personally reassured that everything's fine. Because if there were anything on me, this is the research organization that's looking for stuff on people. They don't have anything. They cannot identify a single thing I've said in the course of 500 live stream Periscope commentaries, tens of thousands of tweets, and a number of articles on human events that they can characterize as quote-unquote extreme or objectionable. They have to find a video I tweeted out 2 years ago and complain about the fact that I defended a Quillette piece. That's it. That's all. Like, really, really bad, right? Like, it's a terrible hit piece. I mean, I'd almost be upset with Alex Kaplan, the author of the piece, for being so, for including it, despite the fact that they just didn't have anything. But yeah, I mean, it's a general attempt to, like, smear by association. But in this case, they've really made a mistake. I mean, they're lumping me in with people like Marsha Blackburn. They're lumping me in with people like Matt Gaetz, Charlie Kirk. These are not extremists, guys. They're normal people. Right, yeah, Amazon has guilt by association because they're personally responsible for my shirt game. As Vicky says, you should be reassured. You're right. You're a risk to their lies and their fake agendas, so they bully. Exactly. I mean, part of the problem for them is that they don't, like, have anything on me. That it's not like they can find objectionable views. I mean, like let's go through some of the articles I've published and some of the major points that I've made. One is a defense of pride flags that I wrote recently, a defense of Richard, not Grinnell, but like the embassies in general, attempt to fly the pride flags. I defended the pride flag and attacked the State Department for refusing to fly it. That's wow, what an extreme, remarkably extreme position. I talked about intersectionality, wrote a piece about Candace Owens' lived experience and went into detail about Kimberly Crenshaw's theory of intersectionality, and nobody had anything to say about that either. Most of my articles are actually applying in left-wing concepts to understand blind spots that the left has when it comes to its own understandings of power and privilege. Defended the Civil Rights Act of 1964 aggressively. Like, what's the extreme position I hold? So, you know, like, I think it's kind of silly. I think it really shows that they're grasping at straws to try and get after me. And really, I mean, they're throwing stones from a glass house because the leader of their organization has made more appalling and contemptible comments than anything I've said in my life, frankly. Like, I've never used the words that Angelo Carasone used in those public blog posts. Never. Never would think to. And the fact that they're going after me as a quote-unquote extremist while their executive director is a person who's made these remarks, had to publicly apologize for them in the Washington Post. Yeah. So, listen, here's the thing. I'm not going to take lectures on extremism from an organization led by a person who's made racist and transphobic remarks and then criticizes others for doing the same thing. I'm not going to take any lectures from a leader of an organization like that. Moreover, I think that if Alex Kaplan is going to call me a extremist, he has to justify why exactly he's willing to work for Angelo Carasone, right? He works for their organization. All these people who want to attack me as a quote-unquote extremist work for a man who has a history of racist and transphobic remarks. Why haven't you resigned? Why haven't you resigned? Do you have no shame? Are you okay with those remarks? Or do you think they can be forgiven? Do you think that old remarks can be forgiven and that the context matters? Because if you think context matters, then you also need to be resigned because you're a massive hypocrite given that you run smears on right-wingers all the time. Like, you don't really have a choice here, guys. If you continue to work for Angelo Carasone, you're hypocrites. And you're hypocrites in the worst way possible because you're trying to ruin people's reputations and then you're hypocritical about the righteousness of doing so. Like, you know, it's sort of a laughing matter, but in some sense it's not, right? I've now been labeled as a quote-unquote extremist by Media Matters. You know, it's a joke because it's so ridiculous, but at the same time, there's a big audience that's going to read that and think, oh no, Will Chamberlain, terrible person, right? Horrible person, must have horrible beliefs, except they couldn't identify a single one. I mean, it's a nasty smear. Now, I'm going to, as Paisano says, I'm going to wear it as a badge of honor, but in general, it's ridiculous that I should have to even do that. And I think that, I mean, and I agree, it means that I'm on people's radars, that, you know, and I guess part of that, see, here's an example of how I don't tolerate extremism. Somebody talks about the USS Liberty, they're going to get muted because that's a conspiracy theory. I don't believe in that conspiracy theory. Those people who believe that for some reason Israel decided to intentionally attack a ship in Egypt, off the coast of Egypt when they were trying to beat Egypt in a war and were relying on the American alliance can leave because that's a dumb argument. I have a history of fighting against things like anti-Semitism, racism, bigotry. And yet I'm an extremist because why? Who knows? Somebody, as Danny says, they go after me because I'm effective. That's true, right? That's true. Because I find the high ground and I shoot down. For example, the high ground here is pointing out that these people work for a man who's made racist and transphobic remarks publicly, really aggressively racist and transphobic remarks publicly, and yet their entire job is to dig up racist and transphobic remarks from other people. So they don't care about it in their own boss, but they'll smear random people they don't even know. You're not living by your principles, guys. Like Madeline, you're not living by your principles. Alex, when you watch this, you're not living by your principles. If you were living by your principles, you resign. On principle. Right? You think you're fighting the good fight? Nah, you're just hypocrites, yo. You're smearing hypocrites working for a left-wing hate group, a hypocritical left-wing hate group run by a guy with a history of racist and transphobic remarks. Right? Somebody says, yeah, it's like, they're sociopathic, right? Like, no, I didn't get a call for comment. Not from Media Matters. I've gotten some, essentially, people have been trying to reach out to me from Politico. I haven't responded because in general, I was trying not to like be public or brag about the social media summit. But somebody says Loomer's suing Facebook for $3 billion. I know the lawyer. The lawyer is a clown. Larry Klayman has a history of being sanctioned and reprimanded by federal judges, as well as the current fact that he's under two current different disciplinary proceedings under the DC bar. One for clearly violating conflict of interest rules by representing plaintiffs against Judicial Watch, the organization he founded and represented. And secondly, for lying and being, sorry, maybe not lying, but lacking candor in court about that proceeding. So, yeah. It's not Coleman, it's Larry Klayman. Yeah, no, I mean, he's doing it. Somebody asked, I am going to the social media summit. Yes, I will be there. I wasn't making it public, but Media Matters apparently made it public for me, so. Yeah, Paisano's like, darn. I'm like, yeah, yeah. So. What are the chances Laura will win? Extraordinarily slim. Somebody says, at least she is fighting. I mean, Larry Klayman is not a lawyer anybody in good conscience should hire. He's a bad person. He also tried to threaten Cassandra Fairbanks with defamation lawsuit. There's a video of that I published yesterday. How they even find out? I don't know. I assume other people told them, because I told, Carpe and a few other people, and I assume it got around among the people who were going, and then some reporter got it, and, somebody says, everybody going to the summit has never been silenced. No, I think there's a few people who have been banned. And I will say this, guys, it's the White House. It's the White House, guys. There are certain people who are not going, and some of the certain people who are not going, I believe in their civil right to speak. That's why I take the positions I do. I genuinely do. But I have a general rule that you shouldn't make yourself hard to defend, in general. especially, and that it's an unreasonable expectation for the president of the United States to invite you to the White House if you behaved in an unreasonable way that would embarrass them. Like that's, even in a world where this is a debate about social media, like that's something people got to understand. Like, exactly. Still, as Still Great says, make yourself easy to defend and take ownership of your faults. Like, it's a completely different debate. It's one thing to say that, like, you should have the right to speak and you shouldn't be banned from a platform. It's another thing entirely to say that the president should invite you to the White House regardless of anything that you've said ever. I mean, think about, like, what we would have done had Barack Obama invited, say, Jeremiah Wright to the White House, or, like, you go down the list. So that's something people need to recognize. Somebody says, Milo should be there. Again, like, somebody says, only one of your questions is heard by the White House. What will it be? Yeah, I did send a question in. We'll see if they ask it. It's about whether or not they think platform access is a civil right. So that's my question. I'm hoping they'll answer it. Hey, Paisani, you should read, like, some of the things Loomer said about me on Telegram. They're really very unkind. Like, I realize that she and I are not good terms, but if, like, you're a Loomer fan and you like me too, you should go read some of the things she said about me. Like, they're very, very vicious and mean. Like, I wasn't trying to bring attention to them because, again, they're on Telegram, but, like, she said some very, very vicious things about me. You can go, I mean, if you go and look for it, you'll find it. It was about 3 weeks ago. So, yeah, and you know what, despite that, I still think she has the right to speak, right? Like, she said, I mean, if you actually go read some of the things she said about me, they're some of the worst things that anybody's ever said about me publicly, for sure, right? They're appalling. And despite the fact that she said those things, I still think she should have a platform. I agree. Jack's working on it. That one, I know the details. It's different than most people expect. Somebody says, yeah. Why would she do this? Because she doesn't like me personally, and I don't really like her. Somebody says, you've never said anything bad about her or others on the right. That's not true. I have said bad things about Laura. Like, and so I wouldn't say that I'm completely innocent in the sense that I did nothing to Laura and she completely did this unprovoked. That's not true. But at the same time, like, her response is just, I have my opinion of Laura. I don't have a high opinion of her. And the things she said about me should give you an indication about why I might not have the highest opinion of her. So, I can't talk about why Jack was disinvited. Yeah. Can't talk about that. So, yeah, as Ian says, Milo needs to pay his employees. Milo owes a lot of people a lot of money and still doesn't pay them. That's another problem. Like, it's weird that he's, like, lecturing people on bad behavior and fraud when he personally has still left a bunch of employees holding a bag. As Paisano says, I like Farrakhan, but he shouldn't be banned either. I agree, right? Louis Farrakhan should have the right to speak. Louis Farrakhan's a noxious anti-Semite. Disagree with the guy entirely. But again, if platform access is a civil right, we think about it and you say, you know what? Like, they get the right to speak too. And I agree that free speech exposes evil and bad ideas. I agree with that. So. Exactly. Like, and that's the thing, right? Like, if you behave badly, like, okay, I think it's fair to expect people to defend your right to speak, but it's not fair to expect them to be willing to, like, invite you to the White House, right? So that's sort of an issue. Knock that off right away. A few more questions. Yeah, Garrison, I mean, I don't know the details there. Like, Garrison's a tricky one because in, like, 95% of his stuff I think is funny and perfectly fine, but it's like, it's true that one cartoon was not good. So, like, again, I understand where the White House is coming from. The White House is trying to take the high ground on anti-Semitism, and it's hard to do that when you're inviting a guy who has a cartoon with Rothschilds controlling the behavior of generals. So I understand it. I'm not like, I'm pretty sympathetic to the White House. Like, it's just one of those things. So, is that all? That's all. Have fun with this stuff, Media Matters. Have fun, guys. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace out. Thank you.